In the early 1800s, when Pennsylvania was still a land of forests, dirt roads, and isolated towns stitched together by rumor rather than law, a funeral home stood at the edge of respectability and fear. Owned by a family whose name was spoken softly and never after dark, because in 1823 death was common but answers were rare, and the people who handled the dead were trusted without question. The family presented themselves as pillars of the community, somber, God-fearing, efficient, collecting bodies from farms, roadsides, and sickbeds, preparing them for burial in an era when epidemics, accidents, and unexplained deaths were part of daily life. Yet behind the heavy wooden doors of their funeral home, something far darker than grief was being processed. Because this family did not merely bury the dead, they selected them, studied them, and, when opportunity allowed, created them. Travelers passing through the town often vanished after last being seen near the funeral home. Their horses found wandering days later, their belongings quietly absorbed into the family's growing comfort, explained away as payment for burial services that no one could verify. And in a time before centralized records, before photographs, before fingerprints, a missing person was simply a tragedy, not a mystery to be solved. Neighbors noticed patterns: how the family always seemed to be the first to arrive when someone died suddenly, how they never appeared shocked, only prepared, how coffins were sealed quickly and funerals rushed, discouraging prolonged viewing with warnings of disease and decay. But suspicion carried little weight against tradition, because who would question those who dealt so intimately with death? Inside the funeral home, the walls absorbed screams no one expected to hear there. Victims restrained under the guise of care, poisoned, suffocated, or struck from behind, their deaths staged as natural or accidental, their bodies processed with professional calm, because the family understood something terrifyingly simple. If you controlled the narrative of death, you controlled the truth. The children were not spared from this education but raised within it, learning early that silence was survival and blood was business. Taught how to clean floors thoroughly, how to remove stains from wood, how to speak gently to grieving relatives while standing on secrets that could destroy the town's sense of safety. And by 1823, the funeral home had become less a place of mourning and more a factory of disappearance, operating in plain sight. The killings were not driven by madness alone, but by profit, by convenience, by the ease with which power could be exercised over those who trusted too easily. Because the dead could not testify and the living feared social shame more than danger, preferring not to ask where certain bodies came from or why some funerals had no families present. Cracks finally appeared when a body arrived bearing wounds that could not be explained by illness or accident. Injuries hidden poorly beneath burial clothes, noticed by a visiting physician, unfamiliar with the family's authority, and whispers turned sharper, carrying questions instead of prayers, forcing townspeople to confront a possibility they had avoided for years, that the people entrusted with honoring the dead were manufacturing death itself. When authorities searched the funeral home, they uncovered shallow graves nearby, personal items hidden in walls and floors, ledgers that recorded payments without names, and tools that belonged to no honest trade, revealing a system built not on impulse but routine, a rhythm of killing as methodical as embalming. Arrests followed, but justice moved slowly, tangled in denial, because acknowledging the truth meant admitting an entire community had been complicit through silence, had benefited from convenience over conscience, and when the family was finally exposed, their crimes reframed the funeral home as a place of horror rather than solace, a reminder that evil does not always hide in forests or abandoned houses, but can wear black clothes, speak softly, quote scripture, and offer condolences while planning the next burial. Even after the trials, even after executions and imprisonments, the town never fully recovered its innocence. Because every funeral thereafter carried an unspoken question, every closed coffin, a reminder that trust, once broken at such a fundamental level, leaves a scar that no prayer can close. And the story of the serial killer family of 1,823 lived on not just as a crime, but as a warning that when death becomes a business and power goes unquestioned, horror does not need to break in from outside. It is invited inside and given the keys.